Welcome, everybody. It's Friday, and today we are joining together as Resiliency Champions. And thank you, Tracy, for getting us over to our slides here. I want to just preview for a moment what we're doing because we're starting a new quote chapter with Resiliency Champions today. And one of the things that a few of us were talking about not too many days ago is just how hard it is to talk to an audience of no faces whatsoever. So if there's anyone who wants to put their camera on, you don't have to, but I'm dressed in travel clothes. I'm about to go cheer my son on in Iowa at a soccer game today. So you can't look too much more Friday-ish than I do right now. And so if you want to turn your camera on, it is so much, Hannah, thank you. It's so much more fun, thanks, Jane, to talk to faces than it is those little icons. So we want to make sure that this really becomes a community. And one way to do that is just by connecting in this way. So let's get started. And Tracy, are you recording?
I think Kaylee hit record.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like we are.
Perfect. So we're starting a new chapter today, and it'll go over the next 4 sessions. And it's going to focus on building your mental strength, managing yourself, and managing your stress. So sort of a compilation of those. And Tracy and I really love the quote that you see on the screen before you. It's not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it. So we can't always control or the stressors that come our way. And in fact, most of the time we can't because we don't necessarily welcome stressors, although stress can be a very, very good thing. It definitely has a purpose in each of our lives. And what we can manage or learn to control is how we react to what we encounter in life and what comes our way. So this is the first of a 4-part series. And on the next slide, you'll see how we have this broken out and what you'll be getting. So the topics covered are really your takeaways. So part 1 today, your takeaway is 6 strategies to build mental strength. And then the next 2 sessions after today, your takeaways will be 8 strategies to manage yourself. And that element is a deeper dive into strategies that were shared during the ECE session 2 training that most of you, if not all of you, have completed now. And they were mentioned in that training. They're in your training materials. And we thought that through Resiliency Champions, it would be a great place to talk about what those are and how to apply them. So we'll spend 2 sessions doing that. And then we will culminate with 4 strategies to reduce stress. So if you look at that at the end of this 4-week or 4-session investment, you'll have 18 new strategies. So what could be better than 18 new strategies? All right, so Tracy and I are going to co-facilitate today. Tracy has a lot of passion and interest in this particular area and has done a lot of the heavy lifting to look at what might be most valuable to everyone. So at this point, I'm going to just key it up and then pass it over to Tracy, and she and I will pass back and forth throughout our time today. So one of the most powerful ways to combat the anxiety that comes through stress is to have a kind of a toolbox, if you will, of strategies that you can draw from. Because one of the things that happens, I think, is we learn, we try strategies. It's trial and error. That's what life is. And we try strategies and they work or they don't work. And the ones that do, we tend to go like, oh, okay, that's my strategy. And then we use it for everything. And over time, it works for some things, not for others. So we want to broaden that toolbox. This information that we're bringing to you today comes from Wendy Suzuki, and she's a neuroscientist and professor of neuroscience and psychology. And she also has written the book Good Anxiety: Harnessing the Power of the Most Misunderstood Emotion. So if you struggle in that area, or through the course of this, you want to take a deeper dive, please feel free to look further into the publications by Wendy Suzuki. We're going to bring you the Cliff Notes, put it into action version of her work today. And with that, I'm passing to you, Tracy.
Thank you. So the first three exercises that she talks about kind of have the common theme of connectedness. So a connectedness to others, yourself, and to nature. So we've got three exercises that she has recommended. The first is to reach out. Um, so with that, it's easy, especially when you're stressed and overwhelmed, to kind of draw into yourself. But science shows us that that's actually kind of counterproductive, and that can kind of send you spiraling um, through things like depression. And so it's really important to surround yourself with people who care about you. um, she also talks about the exercise of practicing positive self tweeting. So, for those of us that are not on social media or don't have Twitter accounts, you don't have to take that particularly literally. But the idea is that you start each day and you end each day with a positive thought about yourself that you're putting outside of yourself. So don't just think it, but actually say it out loud, post it on your social media, write it on a post-it note for yourself, but you're putting it outside of yourself, because that's going to have a greater impact. So think about what your biggest supporters in life would tell you, and then tweet it or say it to yourself. And then the third one is immerse yourself in nature. So there's a lot of science backing that if you connect to nature, it can improve a lot of the different emotions. Your brain has different chemical reactions to being out in that environment. And so find a quiet space with greenery where there aren't a lot of people around. Breathe, relax, listen to the sounds, take in the smells and the sights. Use all of your senses to create a heightened awareness. So we do have a little put it into practice for you guys. So we'll pause for just a moment so you can write down an action step for yourself of how you want to reach out, practice positive self tweeting, and immerse yourself in nature over the next 2 weeks. And I do apologize about the noise behind me. They're installing the new cubes and furniture around corporate today. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and move us forward. So, the next three exercises that she gives us have to do with pushing forward. So, that could be pushing forward mentally, physically, or emotionally. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with this quote by Martin Luther King Jr., but it really resonated, or it popped up in my mind when I was reading the article about pushing yourself forward. But the quote is, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So, in order to move ourselves forward, mentally, you can visualize positive outcomes. So instead of thinking, what's the worst that can happen? That's typically where our minds go when we're trying something new. Think about what's the best that can happen. So kind of reframe that. What's the best that can happen? Think it through, visualize it as if it were true, because then it's actually going to build up that muscle in your brain to think of the positive side, and to start expecting positive outcomes. Try something new. It doesn't have to be a workout, but it could be. It doesn't have to be something hard, but it can be something just outside of your comfort level to give you a little stretch, or just slightly, you know, above where you're currently at. But it could be painting, it could be knitting, it could be a workout, it could be taking up an instrument, but just trying something new. And then the last one is turn anxiety into progress. So our brains have a natural resiliency. It's called plasticity. And so that's the ability for your brain to make new neural pathways. That's why you can have people that end up with brain trauma and they can relearn a skill even though an area of their brain, becomes inhibited or incapacitated in some way. It's because of that neuroplasticity. So it's a natural resiliency that we have. And there's a way that you can turn anxiety into progress that Pamela will cover in a little bit more detail. But for this purpose, we're going to go ahead and, just the same as last time, if you want to write out a goal for yourself for over the next 2 weeks to visualize a positive outcome and to try something new. And we'll give you a second to do that, and then Pamela will take us back.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. And as Tracy mentioned, I'm going to now take you into a little bit of a deeper dive on how to turn anxiety into progress. And before we do that, there's a little bit of a skill set or a single skill that I think will be incredibly beneficial to everyone, not only for this segment, but in life in general. This is just absolutely one of my favorite tools in my toolbox, and it's called reframing. And this is useful in the space of turning anxiety into progress. It is also incredibly useful in life in general, whether it's your professional work and relationships or your personal relationships. So I don't know if you've heard the word reframing before, or know what it is, or have that as a tool in your toolbox. So I thought I'd just spend just a moment here clarifying what it is. And at its essence, it's the ability to think about things differently by changing the way you view a situation or an experience or event or emotion. So you can't change the situation, But what we can do is change the way we look at that situation or view that situation. And so we do that by thinking about it differently, or sometimes it's really helpful to see it from another point of view, to consider other factors. And a lot of times when I've worked with people on reframing, they've said to me, well, aren't we just kind of putting a positive spin on that situation? And that is true. It is a much more positive or optimistic, like the glass is half full side of things, as opposed to the glass is half empty. And the result is that you can replace what is stealing your energy with what can be productive and can give you energy. So just to break that down a little bit more, how many times have any of us thought life shouldn't be this hard? Or what's wrong with me that I have so many challenges? Or what's wrong with me that I have so many problems? Or my life is cursed, just general things like that. And those can become records, that play in our mind over and over and over again. And if those thoughts continue to play over and over and over, they become beliefs. So instead of just observing that, wow, my life is really hard right now, we start to believe it. And that can really steal our energy. And it's kind of like the opposite of resilience. So if we reframe the situation, which is to change our point of view in the way that we're looking at it, the facts all remain the same. Whatever's hard is hard. If you have a difficult relationship, the elements of that relationship are probably still difficult, but we shift how we view the situation. We shift what we choose to look at and how we choose to see it. So in the examples I just gave you, the reframe on that might be, I think there's something really important for me to learn here. I think there's an opportunity for change here. I'm curious to see what's going to happen next, because this is taking a direction that I didn't expect. So we're moving our experience. We're not, disconnecting from that experience. We're joining that experience, but we're moving it from a negative frame to a more hopeful frame. And that hopeful frame is where the opportunities are. So that's one example, redefining a problem as a challenge, and you can insert the details of that, but I think that's pretty universal. We all have problems. And the other way to do that, or just another example, is with people. And, when we have conflict with other people, a lot of times we take it personally and we think somehow, this relates to me, or we judge that person. That's a really critical person. That person's super judgmental. They're being really selfish. They're being a bully. We just externalize that onto them. The other thing we can do then is reframe that and say, wow, that person's going through a lot right now, and they're trying to find, comfort. They're trying to find connection. That person clearly is struggling, and I can be a support. They need support. I can be that support. So we can do that in terms of things that are happening to us in our environment and with our situations, and also in our human relationships and interactions. And that can be really applicable to your teams in thinking about how to reframe what's going on. And maybe instead of being sort of like we're stuck in a rut, looking at and saying, we have reached a point where we have new opportunities. And where are we going to head? So that's reframing. Now let's go into the specifics of how we transition from anxiety into progress. And what I did here is all of this is anxiety into progress, but I went ahead and put those keywords up at the top so that we could be mindful of each element that emotionally comes through the lens of anxiety. So first we have fear and we have sadness. So fear, thinking about reframing again, fear can trigger memories of past failures. Fear can divert our focus from what's most important to perhaps maybe our emotional state. And it can really rob us of achievement or performance. So that's the one side of fear. Or we can reframe fear, and it can create situations where we're more careful about our decisions. We're more thoughtful about our decisions. And fear also can create opportunities for changing direction. So that's a reframe on fear. Fear is not a bad thing. Fear has a place in our lives and in the way that our neural pathways are put together. Looking at sadness. Sadness can flatten mood. Sadness can be a big demotivator. Sadness can make us want to isolate and just, be away from everyone. Sadness can drive us toward habits that aren't particularly healthy. Or sadness can help us reprioritize. Sadness can motivate us to make necessary changes, even when they're difficult, either in our environment, our situations, or our behaviors. So the reframe on sadness that creates progress, the reframe on fear that creates progress. So now we have a little opportunity for you to apply this to your own lives. And so if you just, and I would top of mind this, you guys, because there's a lot to be said for kind of like what's right here today in front of you. If you were to just sit and say, what's my biggest fear right now? What do I fear most? Jot that down and then reframe it into an opportunity, into an action, into something that's more forward looking. And then do the same with sadness. What am I most sad about today? And reframe that. All right. So hopefully you got some thoughts there. And remember that reframing is not denial. Reframing is embracing that thing. And that's part of what's really healthy and builds into resilience, is that instead of just, denying or kind of putting our head in the sand and saying, that's not really my fear, that sadness is too great, I don't want to think about it, we're converting it into progress. So let's take two more here that are emotions or feelings that we have that come with anxiety, and that's worry and frustration. How do we convert those into progress so that our anxiety goes into a positive space? So worry, I don't know how many of you have big worry buttons. I do, and I get really concerned about things because I love excellence and achievement, and I like for things to have significant impact for other people. And so I can sometimes get wrapped into a cycle of worry. And I'm so busy thinking about all the things that could potentially go wrong that all of a sudden I realize, wow, I haven't even gotten started on this project. All I've been trying to do is figure out how to navigate around things that could be challenges. And so it can turn into procrastination, even though you may not see yourself as a person who procrastinates. That can really get in the way. And Tracy, good comment there. So there's a lot of different places where we can worry and then realize we're not taking action to achieve our goals. So the reframe on that is to use worry as a little bit of a compass or a barometer to help fine-tune plans and adjust expectations. It can really help us, it's a good reality check. Yeah, those things could happen, or those things are happening, and we can use that information to manage our expectations, for example, and just be more realistic about something. So that's the reframe on worry. And then frustration, same thing. How many times have any of us hit the wall of frustration, as it's called, and we just kind of stop? We're just so frustrated and we can't see our way over the wall. I always think of frustration that way, like, oh my gosh, I have just hit the wall and it seems so high. I don't know. I can't see on the other side. I can't even see how to get over it. And so the reframe on this is standing back and saying, you know what, I can channel the energy of my frustration into action. I can be even better at what I'm doing because I have this energy that comes through frustration. So reframe for worry, reframe for frustration. Let's try the same kind of exercise where you can apply this to a worry of your own and a frustration of your own, and go ahead and reframe those. All right. And the final area here is the area of anger. And anger also comes under that umbrella of anxiety. And so, how do we reframe our anger? Because anger can really blind us and it can block our ability to move forward or to attend to what's most important, because anger has such an emotional force to it within us. So we also can reframe that and say, well, my anger at this situation is providing me with fuel and motivating me. It's helping me pay attention, because that can become very real. We can become very present in situations through our anger. And it can also help us sort through what is most important or what matters most, because sometimes that flash of emotional anger is not in relation to what's most important. And we can back away from that a little bit, see the picture, and refocus, use the energy of anger, but not the weapon of anger. And that's really how I see the reframe here. Anger is a weapon. The reframe to anger is energy, and energy can be focused and diverted to places where it can make the most difference. So let's try that one from your own situation in our final moments here. And so, as we bring this content session to a close, hopefully the whole concept of reframing and all of the things that we presented to you today will be of benefit to you. I think that the big takeaway from my perspective is that we can choose um, how we want to use the circumstances and situations and emotions that come with life. And we can choose a path of resiliency and vibrancy by utilizing all of the strategies that Tracy and I have laid out for you today. And that takes us away from hopelessness and helps us focus on hopefulness and joyfulness and opportunities. So I appreciate everybody's time today. And I'm just going to challenge everyone to utilize the different skills or strategies that we have put before you today and put reframing into action. It's so powerful, you guys. And it takes practice, though, to do it. So just start somewhere simple and look at situations through a different lens other than just your own, and see how that helps you convert anxiety to progress and to really be able to strengthen your mental capacity and focus as a resiliency champion. Tracy's going to quickly just let you know what's next. And then I hope everybody has a fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela. So next session, September 24th, we're going to cover 4 of the 8 strategies to manage yourself. So we'll be going over box breathing, managing your emotions by taking up space, silencing automatic thoughts and judgments, and practicing active listening. So once again, those are strategies that are covered kind of briefly in the ECE session 2 of customer complaints. So we're going to do a deeper dive there. And have a wonderful and stress free weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.